What if I told you there's a book where every name written inside ends up dead, not by chance, but by design? For over a century it tracked the condemned, but some names appeared before a crime was even committed. They called it the Gallows Ledger, and some say it still exists, waiting for its next name. What if I told you there's a book that doesn't just record death, but causes it? Every name written inside it ended up hanging from the gallows. Some were criminals, others weren't. But once your name was in that ledger, your fate was sealed. Here's the strange part. There are entries, documented ones, that were written before the crime ever happened, as if the book knew what was coming, or worse, as if it decided. They called it the Gallows Ledger, a forgotten relic locked away in the archives of a prison long shut down. But over the years, whispers started to spread that the ledger didn't disappear, it simply moved on, and someone is still writing in it. The Gallows Ledger wasn't just some dusty old notebook. It was a thick, leather-bound record believed to have belonged to one of the oldest prisons in England, though no one can say exactly which one. It started as a simple log, names, dates, crimes, and execution details, mostly hangings. But over time, something changed. Guards noticed names appearing before any arrests were made. Inmates reported seeing their names already written days before their sentencing. Some said the ink was always fresh, as if it had just been written moments ago, even if the page was decades old. Others claimed the book whispered at night, quiet, barely there sounds like scratching quills on parchment. Over the years, stories began to spread. The book wasn't a log, it was a death sentence. If your name ended up in the ledger, your time was up. It didn't matter if you were guilty or innocent, alive or missing, the result was always the same: death by hanging. And those who tried to remove their names didn't survive long enough to try again. Whether it was cursed, haunted, or something far worse, one thing was certain. This was no ordinary book. And those who came across it rarely lived to tell the tale. No one knows exactly who created the Gallows Ledger. There are no official records of its beginning, no author's signature, not even a date on the first page. Just a name. The very first person executed, handwritten in blood-colored ink, with no explanation. Some believe it was started by a prison warden in the late 1700s, during a time when public executions were treated like grim theater. Others think it was the work of an executioner, a man known only as Mr. Gray, who carried out hangings across 3 counties and was rumored to keep a personal book of the condemned. According to whispers passed down through generations, Gray wasn't just a man doing a job. He was obsessed. He believed that death was a form of balance, that certain people were destined to die, and that by writing their names, he was simply helping fate do its work. Some accounts suggest he performed strange rituals before executions, scribbling symbols beside the names in a language no one could read. Over time, other hands began to write in the ledger too: prison guards, court clerks, even clergy, as if the book was taking on a life of its own, pulling people into its grip. What started as a list of the condemned slowly turned into something darker, something prophetic. It didn't just document death anymore. It seemed to predict it. And that's when people began to fear the ledger itself. Not the hangman's noose, not the law, but the book. Because once it had your name, nothing could save you. Over the years, several entries in the Gallows Ledger stood out, not just for the crimes listed, but for how they defied logic, time, and even reality. One of the earliest and most disturbing entries was a man named Thomas Bell. His name appeared in the ledger 2 full weeks before he was ever arrested. At the time, he was a well-respected schoolteacher. No record, no suspicion. But 13 days later, a young boy went missing. The investigation led to Bell's home, where authorities found something no one should ever have to see. He was arrested, tried, and hanged. But when someone went back to the ledger to record it officially, the name was already there. Same ink, same handwriting, dated 2 weeks before the boy even vanished. Then there's the case of Margaret Ellis. She was never convicted of a crime, never even accused. But her name showed up in the ledger in 1863, marked with a faint pending beside it. Weeks later, she was pushed in front of a horse-drawn carriage. Witnesses claimed it looked like an accident, but the man who claimed to have tried to save her said he felt something strange, like a hand pulling him back, away from her, just as she stepped into the street. Her death was ruled a tragedy, but when her name was checked again in the ledger, the word pending had vanished. In its place, one word, collected. And then there was Daniel Price, a petty thief sentenced to 7 years of hard labor. But his name was in the ledger, and not in pencil, not as a mistake, fully inked, fully dated, even though he was never on death row. 3 days later, a prison beam collapsed during a rainstorm. It struck only one man, Daniel Price, instantly killed. That same night, a guard reportedly saw the ledger close itself, slowly, on its own, as if satisfied. These weren't coincidences, at least not to the people who worked in those prisons. Some of them refused to touch the book at all. Others swore it had moved from desk to desk without anyone touching it. And every time someone tried to lock it away, it somehow ended up back on the executioner's table, open to a fresh page. At some point in the late 1800s, the Gallows Ledger vanished. One day it was there, thick and worn on the executioner's desk, and the next, it was gone without a trace. Some say the prison staff locked it away, hoping to end the curse and silence the whispers once and for all. Others believe it was stolen by someone desperate to keep its secrets hidden. But what's chilling is what happened after it disappeared. Those who had worked closely with the ledger began to die under strange circumstances. The prison warden was found hanging in his quarters, officially ruled a suicide, but guards whispered they saw no signs of struggle, no note, nothing to explain it. An executioner who last handled the book disappeared entirely, vanished without a trace, like he was erased. Rumors spread that anyone who tried to destroy or remove the ledger was doomed to suffer the same fate as those whose names it held. Over the decades, the ledger supposedly resurfaced in different places, forgotten archives, private collections, even in the possession of collectors who refused to speak about it. Every time it reappeared, it brought with it more death and mystery. Some claim the book chooses who finds it, like it's alive, hunting for the next name to write. And to this day, no one knows where the Gallows Ledger truly is. Some say it's locked away, gathering dust in a hidden vault. Others believe it's out there, still open, waiting for someone to write their name. Despite disappearing over a century ago, the Gallows Ledger hasn't been forgotten. In recent decades, whispers of its return have surfaced in online forums, haunted history groups, and even dark web corners. Some claim to have seen blurry photographs of the book, its leather cover cracked, pages yellowed, names written in a strange looping script. One supposed sighting came from a collector in England who found the ledger tucked behind loose bricks in an abandoned estate. He swore that after bringing it home, his family was plagued by unexplained accidents, shadows lurking in corners, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. But skeptics argue it's all just legend, a ghost story passed down to entertain or scare. They say no credible evidence exists, no official records can verify the ledger's existence beyond myth. Still, the idea of a cursed book that seals your fate grips people's imaginations. Psychologists call it the power of belief. When you think something is cursed, you start to notice every coincidence, every unlucky moment, reinforcing the legend. Whether it's real or just a story, the Gallows Ledger taps into a universal fear that fate isn't random, and that some forces, unseen and unknown, might already have your name written down. And if that's true, would you want to know? So here's the question you need to ask yourself. What if the Gallows Ledger is real? What if it's not just a story, not just an old book lost to time, but something far more dangerous? Imagine for a moment. Your name appears in a ledger like that. No trial, no chance to defend yourself, just ink on paper and an inevitable fate waiting. Would you try to erase your name? Would you hide? Or would you dare to write someone else's name in it, hoping to escape your own destiny? The terrifying truth is, whether you believe in curses or not, some stories don't disappear. They linger, whispered in shadows and passed from one generation to the next. The Gallows Ledger is one of those stories. It forces us to face a dark idea that maybe death isn't random, that fate might already be written, and all that's left is for the ink to dry. So, if you ever hear of a book that decides who lives and who dies, remember this video and think twice before asking where it is, because some names, once written, can never be erased. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.